What is a multifamily rental property? I'm going to give you a very short answer to this question, and then I'm going to dive in a little bit more into some depths about this distinction, because ultimately, the further you go in investing, those distinctions are actually going to kind of matter. So, if you have ever been interested in multifamily rental property investing, hit that thumbs up button because I want to know how many of you are looking into this, or maybe you've already done it. Share your stories down in the comments. Okay, the quick answer to what is a multifamily rental property. A multifamily rental property is any property with two or more units in a single property that you own as a rental property. So like a duplex, for example, has two units within under one roof. So you can have two separate families, two separate rental incomes. Triplex has 3 units, fourplex has 4 units, five, six, and so on, all the way to the big condo buildings, big apartment complexes. You could have an apartment complex with hundreds of units, and that is a multifamily rental property. Any property that is multiple family units that you're renting out is a multifamily rental property. Easy peasy. That's in contrast to a single family house, which is just one family can be in the house at a time, assuming they're not renting out bedrooms or whatever. But multiple units that you're renting out. That's the short answer. If that makes sense, hit that like button. Now, here's the more in-depth answer if you want to really get kind of wild about this. So I actually, if you have seen any of my videos, you know I love a good whiteboard. So I have written some of these things on the whiteboard just to clarify the different distinctions we're going to go through. So we already talked about the single family versus multifamily distinction, 1 unit versus 2 or more units. Now, the next distinction that you need to be aware of is the residential versus commercial asset class distinction. So residential units, per the IRS, per lenders, per everyone who's involved in this, includes properties that are 1 to 4 unit properties. So a single family house, duplex, triplex, fourplex, some people call them quads. Those are all in the residential property category. Any property with 5 or more units, 5 up to however many, 200, it doesn't matter, 1,000 units, 5 and above is considered the commercial asset class. Why do we care about those distinctions? Because here's why we care. The valuation, how those properties are valued, is a very different process between residential properties and commercial properties. So as an investor, you care about value and you need to know if you're getting a good deal or not. You need to understand how those properties are valued because it's two very different ways. And then also, which is also important for investors, your financing options are going to be very different. You can't get a traditional mortgage on a commercial property, and commercial financing has different aspects to it, different qualifications, different everything. So as an investor, when you are saying, hey, I want to be a multifamily rental property investor, cool. But are you talking about residential multifamilies or commercial? Because those are two very different avenues, even though we're kind of talking about the same concept. You have one roof that houses several units or multiple units with different families paying you rent. Same concept, but different distinctions depending on how many units that property has. So you, as a multifamily investor or aspiring multifamily investor, if you go to someone and say, hey, I would like to invest in a multifamily rental property, be able to tell them if you're talking about residential or commercial, because, and oh, another difference between these two totally different real estate agents, residential real estate agents, commercial real estate agents. They can do a little bit of crossover, but again, it's two different animals. So you need to know what you're working with here. So that is my first bullet. We've talked about single versus multi. We've talked about residential versus commercial. Now let me talk just quickly about the tenants. And again, the reason that I put this out in bullet points is A, I love a whiteboard, and B, I love bullet points. But also because I'm telling you a lot very quickly, I want you to just kind of be able to visualize. I'm talking about specific categories here. So the tenants, don't be confused, and this is really just kind of for your own knowledge. When we start talking about commercial rental properties, it can get a little hairy because it's not just apartment buildings that count as commercial buildings, 5 or more units, but movie theaters, shopping centers, retail strips, office buildings, warehouses, all of those things are considered commercial properties. So, and let's take the case of a shopping center. If you as an investor go buy a shopping center, your tenants who rent from you, because this still is a rental property setup, but your tenants who rent from you are going to be commercial tenants. This could even be restaurant buildings. So a restaurant or an office or a small shop, those are your tenants. Those are commercial leases with commercial tenants. When we're talking about an apartment building, we are talking about 5 or more units. We're talking about a commercial building that houses residential tenants. See kind of where the lines start getting crossed here? This is why I wanted to map this out in my bullet points here. So we have the difference between single and multifamily rental properties, pretty basic, but within those distinctions, we have residential versus commercial asset classes because it matters for financing, what agent you use, what your financing terms will be, how the property is valued, everything. And then to further get confusing, within the commercial asset class category, we have the potential of having a commercial property with commercial tenants or a commercial property with residential tenants. Okay, see, follow me there? So I'm gonna throw some links down below. I've hit quite a few big topics here. I'm gonna throw some links below for some random videos to kind of help you understand these things. Number one, pros and cons versus investing in rental properties that are single family versus multifamily. Number two, remember how I told you the valuation is different for residential properties versus commercial? I'm going to give you some information on that. And, you know, I think I'll throw in a bonus video. If you're wondering how all these numbers are going to play in, you want to make sure you know how to run the numbers and calculate them appropriately. So I'm going to throw one last video in about that also. So if this was helpful and if all of this makes sense for you, make sure you've hit that like button and please subscribe to my channel because I have videos coming out every week that will hopefully help you along your rental property investing journey as much as possible.